Are you ready for Barbenheimer Mania? That's because today's the day. Those two huge movies, Barbie and Oppenheimer, both opening today, and the National Association of Theater Owners is projecting that more than 200,000 moviegoers will get tickets to see both films, not just one of them, on the same day this weekend.
On July 21st, 2023, one of the most culturally significant events in American popular culture took place. Two widely different films, released by two rival studios, both of which are directed by Oscar-nominated directors, carried by an all-star cast of Hollywood actors, telling the stories of two of the most prominent figures in American history, were given a simultaneous theatrical release. Those two films were Barbie and Oppenheimer. The Barbenheimer phenomenon was a very peculiar case where two films, which were initially seen as summer blockbuster rivals, were actually embraced as a summer double feature. Rather than choosing one film over the other, most audiences opted to watch both films on the same day. Whether it was treated as an internet challenge or just another way to enjoy the two movies at the theaters, Barbenheimer not only contributed to the two films' success at the box office, but it was also a showcase of the American public's ability to shift studio expectations and change the way we're perceived as consumers. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer is a historical thriller that tells us the story of American physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer and how his scientific discoveries led to the creation of the atomic bomb. While covering the events of the Manhattan Project and the latter years of World War II, the film also uncovers the conspiracies surrounding Oppenheimer and his supposed connections with the Communist Party. Although Oppenheimer's name would be cleared many years later, his legacy will forever be attached to humanity's greatest curse. However, despite all of Oppenheimer's conspiracies and bureaucratic themes, along with the historical subtext that is clearly illustrated in the film, what if I were to tell you that of the two films that released that summer, Barbie, a film presented as a more lighthearted comedic fantasy, arguably ended up being the most political film of 2023.
Hey, Ken, I was thinking about, maybe taking a year off, going back to college, starting my career. Not this, Barbie. You're staying home and having my kid.
Please tell me those aren't poisonous. They're not. They just...
Now I am become dust, the destroyer of worlds.
And ascending to godhood. Oh. Okay.
I love Barbie. Barbie was, in my opinion, one of the best films of 2023, and I have spent the last year trying to figure out how I should approach this film. Because, truth be told, I have so much to say about this film. Now, for those of you who have seen my past few videos, you know that I have previously referenced Barbie at some capacity. In my 2023 recap video, I briefly talked about Barbie's contributions to the box office. And in my documentary short film, She's So Mother, I showcased how the relationship between Barbie and her creator, Ruth Handler, reflects the film's themes of motherhood and womanhood. However, I've been wanting to analyze this film in its own separate video. The problem is, what hasn't been said about this film yet? There are various YouTube videos and online articles that have already completely dissected the plots and themes presented in this film from beginning to end. Barbie as a stand-in for feminism, Ken as a stand-in for the patriarchy, the cultural impact of Billie Eilish's Oscar award-winning song What Was I Made For, the cultural impact of I'm Just Ken and how it turned Ryan Gosling into the internet's new lover boy. Alan. I actually don't know what Alan was supposed to represent. The point is, I couldn't figure out how I was going to approach this film because so much has already been said about it. And with the film reaching its first anniversary next month, I felt like I ran out of options. That was until I started taking a very interesting course at my university. Okay, so almost every quarter, this course, along with many other film classes at my school, covers different movie genres that are popular in Hollywood and Western popular culture. This quarter, we specifically covered conspiracy thrillers. As the name of the genre suggests, we not only analyze these films and how they reflect different events in American history, but we also discuss the many conspiracies and conspiracy theories that surrounded some of these events. Communist sleeper agents, modern-day terrorism, the assassination of prominent political figures, corruption of the US government, resource-driven conflicts, capital interest, anxieties of the 21st century American life.
Seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
I loved this class, and I loved the films that we watched. But there was one particular film that caught my attention, because its premise feels strikingly familiar.
Bobby, stop it! Look at me! Say I'm right! You are different, your figure's different, your face, what you talk about, all of this is different.
Yes, this. It's wonderful. Why don't you change your mind and have a cup?
The Stepford Wives is a 1975 feature film that many scholars consider a feminist conspiracy thriller. After moving to Stepford with her family, Joanna notices a strange series of occurrences that revolve around the wives who live in the supposedly peaceful town. While the husbands of Stepford continue to thrive with their men's association, Joanna and the other women of Stepford struggled with finding any sense of feminine agency in this archaic society. A greater plot is revealed later in the film when Joanna discovers that all of the women of the town have been replaced by robots.
Why, look at your hand. No, you look. Joanna. How could you do a thing like that?
But before Joanna could unveil all the secrets of Stepford, she is caught by the hands of the Men's Association, and she too is replaced by a robotic clone. Stripped away of her humanity, Joanna is doomed to live the rest of her life as a Stepford wife. A film that uses American popular culture trends to portray feminist socio-political themes reflecting on the struggles of being a woman in a male-dominated society. Where have I seen this before? Oh yeah, Don't Worry Darling did it.
I gave you all of this, Alice! We are lucky to be here!
Okay, so using different film genres to portray feminist themes is something that has become increasingly prevalent in modern-day Hollywood. In this class, we briefly discussed how more recent films such as 2022's Don't Worry Darling and 2014's Ex Machina can perhaps serve as evolutions or retellings of the Stepford Wives. All three of these films use the thriller genre to capture the societal pressures of being a woman in American society. Also, yes, I am fully aware that Stepford Wives received a remake back in 2004, but for the sake of my sanity...
Don't you touch her!
Yeah, I'm not touching that remake with a 6-foot pole. Other examples include the superhero genre, with heroes such as DC's Wonder Woman and Marvel's Captain Marvel serving as both representations and role models of female empowerment. And there's also the horror genre, with movies such as 2022's X and 2024's Immaculate putting female characters at the center of their stories, either putting them up against the killer or becoming the killer themselves in order to establish their feminine agency. In the case of Barbie, well, despite being listed as a comedy fantasy film on Google, I personally think that this film can also be interpreted as a conspiracy thriller. Not in the same sense as how Oppenheimer is a conspiracy thriller, but more like a reflection of the genre as a whole. Let's start off simple. The film's themes of feminism are presented through a satirical fantasy-driven world that pokes fun at our reality, but is also scarily accurate to it. This comedic self-awareness of the real world can apply to most modern-day conspiracy thriller films, especially ones that use postmodernism as the basis for their stories. As we discussed in the beginning of the quarter, postmodernism serves as one of the meta frames of this genre, marked by its campiness, imitations of earlier film aesthetics and styles, and critiques of late capitalism, postmodernism plays a key role in the way today's conspiracy thrillers reflect on societal problems. And, wouldn't you know it, Barbie carries all of these attributes throughout its story. The film is filled to the brim with tons of campy and comedic moments that poke fun at the ridiculousness of the story. Whether it's Barbie making self-referential remarks about the fact that she's a toy,
and I would just like to inform you, I do not have a vagina. And he does not have a penis.
or the human characters, Sasha and Gloria, just accepting the fact that Barbie Land coexists with the real world without questioning it whatsoever.
Where are we going? Barbie Land! What? Mom, are you really gonna let Barbie take you and your tween daughter to an imaginary land? Yes, and you wanna know why? Because I never get to do anything.
The film is not scared to admit just how silly and outlandish the storyline is. The film also imitates the styles and aesthetics of various other films. The entire opening of Barbie, which was made famous by the film's first teaser trailer, is a nearly identical recreation of the opening scene of 2001: A Space Odyssey, with Barbie being a stand-in for the monolith. Some scholars suggest that this opening scene is meant to reflect how the creation and development of Barbie contributed to the evolution of young girls, the same way 2001: A Space Odyssey is argued to be one of the most influential films in cinematic history. From how I interpret it, this opening shot can also serve as a reflection of gender roles in the film industry. What was once a male-dominated art form can now become something that women can pursue in. Barbie's director, Greta Gerwig, proves this by literally recreating one of the most iconic movie moments of all time, which was of course originally conceived by a male director, showing that female directors are absolutely capable of doing what male directors have been doing for decades. In a way, The Stepford Wives also takes this approach. Unlike earlier conspiracy thriller films, which are mostly male-focused and male-driven, Stepford takes a daring step forward by having a female character, Joanna, be the main protagonist who sets forth in solving the conspiracy and taking down the overlying power. But of course, considering how the ending of the film turned out, yeah, she unfortunately doesn't receive the same happy ending as Barbie does.
Oh, but since I came all this way, could I just meet the woman in charge? Your CEO.
Oh, that would be me.
Oh, your CFO.
Me.
Your COO.
Here.
President of the Barbie division.
President. I'm a man with no power. Does that make me a woman?
The film's critiques of late capitalism are made very obvious through the depiction of Mattel, Barbie's parent company. When describing late capitalism in relation to conspiracies, theorist Skip Willman explains that because of today's contemporary society, where societal trends often align with our ever-evolving technology, the consumers are made vulnerable because of their willingness to follow these trends. As a result, it provides corporations, like Mattel, with a network of power and control that the general public may not be aware of. We don't entirely know what these companies are doing with our online data. And today's Americans unfortunately have to live with this technological paranoia of our data becoming breached or leaked. It comes to show how late capitalism cares more about corporate greed and less about the safety and needs of the consumer.
Imagine 30% of America unable to heat their houses.
Let's take the 2005 film Syriana, for example. In the film, the US government, in partnership with many wealthy oil companies, are able to make a deal with Iran to establish American-owned oil farms in the Middle East. This deal not only contributed to the growth of the US economy, but it also softened tensions between America and Iran. What the US failed to realize, however, is that this deal would cost the jobs of many Pakistani workers. People who were seeking a better life in Iran were now being forced out of the country because of this American invasion. It further exemplified how the US and its many corporations failed to recognize the drawbacks of their capitalist endeavors. Although it benefited the US economically, it unfortunately worsened the lives of workers in the Middle East. Now, let's imagine a similar scenario but with Mattel as a stand-in for the US government and its partner corporations. Well, I think that this scene from the Barbie movie perfectly encapsulates all of the problems with late capitalism.
Tell me your secret dream, child.
Okay, what about ordinary Barbie?
Terrible idea.
Yeah, that's going to make money.
Oh, ordinary Barbie, I love it.
American corporations completely disregarding the needs of the people, caring about it only when it benefits them financially and economically. Pure capitalist greed at its finest. This f***ing country. So now that we have discussed the postmodernist attributes of Barbie, how else can this film be interpreted as a conspiracy thriller? I mean, when we think of conspiracy thrillers, we think of a social detective who becomes entangled in a problem, goes on this big quest to solve the mystery behind the problem, only to find out that it was all part of an even bigger societal problem. Wait a minute. Okay, so there are a bunch of other conspiracy thriller story elements that are found in Barbie. One of them being the double protagonist. Referring back to class lectures, the double protagonist storyline revolves around two main characters facing the same problem, and both of them work together to figure out how to solve this problem. Films such as 1962's The Manchurian Candidate and 2005's Syriana are both great examples of the double protagonist story, and they both showcase two or more characters becoming entangled in the same conspiracy. In the beginning of Barbie, the film's title character, played by Margot Robbie, starts to experience various changes in her daily routine that start to affect her life and well-being. Wanting to solve this problem, Barbie decides to go to the real world to look for the human who's been playing with her, and hopefully solve their problems together. That human turns out to be Gloria, played by America Ferrera, a middle-aged woman who is facing the same struggles and insecurities as Barbie. Throughout the film, the two of them help each other with working their way through these problems. Long story short, the both of them realized that their insecurities and problems were both linked to an overlying threat. But what is this overlying threat? Well, traditionally, conspiracy thrillers often break it down to one common threat. In the case of Stepford, it was the Men's Association. For Barbie, however, let's multiply that by 2. The first and most obvious overlying threat is Mattel. In addition to serving as a representation of late capitalism, this fictional depiction of the company also showcases how modern-day corporations love to capitalize off of female empowerment and other social justice movements. When appealing to these social movements, companies fail to recognize why these movements are important in the first place. Very coincidental that this video is being posted in June. This is perfectly exemplified in this scene of the film. When the Mattel CEO tries to sympathize with Barbie, but fails to recognize the situation she's in.
Women are the freaking foundation of this very long, phallic building. We have gender-neutral bathrooms up the wazoo. Every single one of these men love women. I'm the son of a mother. I'm the mother of a son. I'm the nephew of a woman aunt. Some of my best friends are Jewish.
Furthermore, the film also depicts Mattel as a male-dominated company, with Gloria, Mattel's only female employee, being limited to working at the front desk while the male employees get to make the major decisions. It's almost as if Mattel is using the Barbie brand as a way to intrude the feminist movement and gain control over their female consumers. And perhaps it's this male intrusion of feminism that causes Barbie, Gloria, and other women to feel insecure about themselves. The unrealistic societal expectations set by Barbie, well, I'll just let Sasha finish that sentence off.
You set the feminist movement back 50 years. You destroyed girls' innate sense of worth, and you are killing the planet with your glorification of rampant consumerism.
Yeah, what she said. Similarly, in The Stepford Wives, the Men's Association uses their power and access to technology to regain control over their wives, and therefore, in true patriarchal fashion, regain control of society. Speaking of patriarchy, okay, let's finally talk about Ken. As if the internet hasn't been talking about him for the past year now. From how I interpret it, Ken serves as an anti-protagonist, someone who is also entangled in the conspiracy but ultimately becomes part of the overlying threat, rather than fighting against it. What makes this different from an antagonist is that the character, to some capacity, is aware that what they're doing is wrong. In a way, Ken is to Barbie what Walter was to Joanna in Stepford Wives. Oh yeah, I didn't really talk about Walter that much.
Walter? You all right?
In the Stepford Wives, Walter is Joanna's husband, and he's the one who convinces Joanna to move their family to Stepford. At first, Walter was a very supportive husband who simply wanted the best for Joanna and their family. However, once he joins the men's association and becomes part of their elaborate scheme, we slowly start to see this loving husband turn into a demanding, impatient man. There's a moment in the film where Walter is seen crying after coming home from a men's association meeting, suggesting that he knows that what he's getting involved in is wrong. But unfortunately, he fully submits himself to the overlying threats and becomes part of it. Towards the end of the film, he tries to seduce Joanna into thinking that everything is fine, but once he catches on that Joanna had already figured out his schemes, he becomes violent and tries to force Joanna to comply with him.
And I just go on upstairs and lie down.
Don't talk to me like that. I don't want to lie down. I want my children.
Joanna, go upstairs and lie down now.
Don't tell me what to do, you bastard.
Joanna!
Similarly, when Ken joins Barbie in the real world, he is influenced by the concept of the patriarchy and decides to go back to Barbie Land to spread the word of his new findings. By the time Barbie returns to Barbie Land, she realizes that Ken has already had an influence on both the Kens and the Barbies, and the once female-led dream world had become a male-dominated nightmare. Ken has the entirety of Barbie Land under his control, so when Barbie refuses to comply with the patriarchy, Ken, like Walter, becomes unreasonably rageful.
Barbie! Take your lady fashions with you! Take your celebrate disco bell-bottoms!
Deep inside, Ken doesn't want to be angry at Barbie because he loves her, but knowing that this is the most power and agency he's had in his entire life, he continues to submit to the patriarchy. Both Ken and Walter resemble the conspiracy thriller genre's depiction of the male character and their influence on the audience. As theorist Laura Mulvey states, most conspiracy thrillers showcase the male characters as the ego ideal, someone who the audience, regardless of sex, can look up to. In the case of Ken, his patriarchal ego in the film is something that both other Kens and Barbies look up to, and it's an ego that they willingly adopt. On the other hand, the ego of the men's association, and therefore Walter's ego, have a strong influence on the women of Stepford due to their marital relationships. The men take advantage of this trust and use it to gain control over their wives. Ken's anti-protagonist role in Barbie can reflect the masculine and sometimes misogynistic aspects of the conspiracy thriller genre. Of course, films such as The Stepford Wives try to give us a female-centric conspiracy story, but at the end of the day, men, both in film and in the film industry, will always have this ego that insists that they will always be the center of the story. Looking at the audience reception of Barbie, we can even see how some of the most memorable moments in this Barbie film all come from Ken. With this in mind, are we to assume that Barbie meets the same unfortunate fate as other feminist conspiracy thrillers? Thankfully, this is a goddamn Greta Gerwig movie, and we get a much happier ending this time around.
Okay, ladies, let's do this! All those in favor of letting Barbie Land be Barbie Land, say aye.
Where Barbie differs is that the female characters actually do regain their agency, Not only are they able to stop the overlying threats, but they're also able to change it. While Ken once thought that he needed power and the patriarchy to find meaning in his life, Barbie made him realize that he only needed himself to be worthy. He was enough.
Thank you, Barbie. Thank you.
And similarly, Gloria is able to convince the Mattel CEO that they don't need to capitalize on feminism to appeal to the female demographic. Sometimes being a normal Barbie is all it takes to inspire generations of girls to become something greater.
What about ordinary Barbie?
Terrible idea. Yeah, that's going to make money. Oh, ordinary Barbie, I love it.
Okay, yeah, the Mattel CEO doesn't really change as a character. He's still a capitalist douchebag by the end of the film, so all we can really say is capitalism. But overall, this film gives us a satisfying conclusion, and Barbie gets to go back to living her normal life. Right? The opening scene to The Stepford Wives depicts Joanna in a delimited frame. She is seen in the background sitting in a room while the walls, in the foreground, squeeze her towards the further left side of the frame. As we discussed in class, the use of delimited frames are meant to represent the pressures that are put on a character. In this case, Joanna is met with the pressures of being a woman in a male-dominated society, scared that her independence and agency can be taken away from her at any moment. One of the ending scenes of Barbie is the complete opposite of this. In this scene, we see Barbie having a conversation with her creator, Ruth. The two of them are at the center of the frame, surrounded by a wide subliminal space. Barbie is given a choice. She can either stay in Barbie Land and live the rest of her days as stereotypical Barbie, or she can join the real world and perhaps become part of something much bigger. Unlike Joanna, who had no choice but to conform to this unbearable American society, Barbie deliberately decides to join it. But why? After witnessing firsthand how terrible the real world can be, how can she possibly live up to the unrealistic expectations, societal constructs, capitalist interest, and corruption that can be found in the real world? Well, the truth is, she doesn't have to. If there is one valuable lesson that I can take away from my time in this class, it's that just like how we come up with conspiracy theories to cope with our unjust society, we can come up with new ideas and concepts that can help us change it for the better. That leads me to one final question in this video. What is the conspiracy theory presented in Barbie? Well, the film does suggest that in order to change our society, we must overcome an overlying power, whether it's capitalism or the patriarchy or whatever. That begs the question, what is the overlying power that's preventing us from living a fair, just, and peaceful life? Well, that overlying power is ourselves. When we look at Barbie's arc in the film, we assume that all of her problems are directly caused by an overlying threat. But in reality, it was her reluctance to confront that threat that prevented her from solving her problems. Going back to the beginning of the film, when she meets Weird Barbie for the first time, Weird Barbie gives her a choice.
You can go back to your regular life and forget any of this ever happened, or you can know the truth about the universe. The choice is now yours. The first one, the high heel. No. We'll do a redo. You're supposed to want to know. I don't. Babe, listen. You have to want to know, okay? Do it again.
Barbie, too scared to confront the unknowns of the real world, immediately chooses the high heel, hoping that it'll return her to her old life. However, as Weird Barbie pointed out, the only way Barbie could solve all of her problems is by confronting them directly. Of course, this changes by the end of the film, as Barbie decides that maybe the real world is worth confronting after all. Thus, she learns what it's like to finally be human. In the real world, we as human beings are given that same exact choice. We could either continue to live in an unjust society controlled by corrupt politics and capitalist greed, or we can make the effort to voice out our opinions and fight for social change. I mean, look at what happened with Barbenheimer. We, the audience, changed the way Hollywood studios and filmmakers perceive the consumers, It made them realize that we aren't just mindless robots who will watch anything. We expect quality cinema. We don't have to continue living in a world run by late capitalism. If there are companies that we think do not deserve our money, we have the ability to stop giving them money. We don't have to continue living by society's gender norms. Some Barbies want to be Kens, some Kens want to be Barbies. Some people don't even want to be Barbie or Ken. They don't have to conform to those constructs if they choose not to. Sometimes, people just want to be an Alan. Oh! And, most importantly, only we, human beings, are capable of coming up with ideas that can make the world a better place. In the words of Ruth Handler, humans only have one ending. Ideas live forever. We have the ability to change the world. We just have to confront it.
But never forget that the system is rigged, so find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful.